Good evening, everyone. We are with you again today. Self is Captain Vipul Choudhary, ex-4 at Kochhar Rifles, and with me is Colonel Manish Kochhar. Sir is a ex-signals officer. The talk today is about what is HR, what is operations, what is security. A lot of officers have been confused because in Army we do not have the the things defined like this. We do not have our department or different areas wherein we are defined as if this is HR or this is uh, security, this is operations. Therefore, we are not able to make the parallels when it comes to the uniform services. The two concepts. And that is what we'll try and discuss and get some clarity on that issue with you. And once me and Kochhar sir are through with our discussion, you're most welcome to ask your questions. So, Manish sir, I'll start the discussion with the first question, which is, I mean, what do you think we are going to explain to the people today? What are our learning objectives for?
So, Vipul, I just sent a message on the groups also. We keep getting this query. So many people keep contacting us, you, me, um, and there is so much lack of clarity. Sir, what should we target? What function? What roles? What industry? So basically, what it told me and as our discussion what emerged was that people had lot of people don't have the clarity uh, uh, in understanding the function roles in the corporate. So learning of and what is how can you draw a parallel? So many people think that security is a support function, but then it can be a core function for some industry. So basically, today's learning objective would be to understand the functional roles in the corporate, then draw parallel between uniform and corporate tasks, and then understand the difference and impact of core and support function. So, so that one can actually see what one has done in uniform, and if he wants to leverage that experience being part of core function in a corporate, then what kind of industry he should target, or if he wants to be support function, what kind of industry he can target, right? So that is the learning objective as far as I think today's talk is concerned.
Right, sir? And what are the categories amongst which the corporate defines or differentiates its functions?
But there are so many categories. You have operations, you have business support services. When I say support services, administration is a support, can be a support in most of the businesses. Security may be a secure this thing, training, human resource, uh, business development, general management, sales. So there are so many categories in a corporate where the people who are coming from uniform they can fit into these roles depending upon what their skills and objectives and fitment is.
So, as a list, if I say what are these categories, sir? Just to if we create a list of the categories, what are these categories?
So people, you can have a. I didn't get your question actually. You're asking what? How do you categorize these? Huh?
Like in Army, we have the Q function, we have adjutant, we have GS function.
Okay,
So,
fine.
in
So
corporate, what are the different categories?
you can categorize these function into core functions and support functions.
Mhm.
So, core functions are what? Anything which is critical for the survival, which is revenue fetching, revenue assurance, which is getting business, growth aspects, growth prospects, which assures those. And these are generally not outsourced, or if they are outsourced, they will be very partially outsourced. like you have channel partners in a sales function. You may have your sales team, and then you may have channel partners. It is kind of partly outsourced.
Mhm.
Then you have support functions, so which supports the business continuity. The business is not affected. It may be outsourced, and growth is in these particular areas. If you are joining support function, then you may or may not reach the top positions. It doesn't. When I say you may not reach the top position, doesn't mean that uh, you may not get to be the CEO. Maybe, for example, if you are in infantry,
Mhm.
it is a core function of army. It
Mhm.
is the combat arm. Okay, and signals is a combat support arm.
Right.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is core function is something which is fetching money.
Mhm.
Support function is something which ensures that that money is not stopped because of various reasons. You know, administrative reasons, security reasons. There is no disruption in business. So that is how you can decide. So tell me why would we categorize?
सर कैटेगराइज सो दैट व्हेन आई एम डिसाइडिंग कि मुझे कौन सी नौकरी करनी है और वो उस पर्टिकुलर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में हाउ इट इज स्टैक्ड. सो आपने जैसे सिग्नल्स और इन्फेंट्री का एग्जांपल लिया. इफ आई एम टेकिंग आर्मी एज अ होल and if I am an infantry officer or armored officer or a mechanized infantry officer or artillery officer, which is a direct combat arm, then I am in the core function of armed forces, which is to fight. So the core function of armed forces is to fight, and the other support arms, their job is to provide efficiency and effectiveness for the main arms to fight. Therefore, the chief of the army staff is more or less, the chances are a very high probability that he is going to be from the combat arms. Same would go for the Navy as well as for the Air Force. Whereas, whereas an officer who is in the support arm would rise to be the head of the department of the support arm. Let's say you are a signals officer, and if you had continued to rise, then as a signals officer, you would have been the DG signal. That would have been the uh,
End of signals.
highest hierarchy for the signals officer in his. Mostly, I'm not saying you cannot be chief technically, but that's not how the organization is made. So if I'm joining the banking industry, and if I'm joining the banking industry as a security officer or in the security function, then the opportunity for me to be the CEO or the COO of the bank is very minimal. I would be the chief security officer, which would be the department head, but I cannot be the CEO because bank gets its money from the banking business. On the other hand, if I'm joining an organization which is say giving me well security providing security services is what fetches in money, then I am now in the core function of that organization. I could be a service provider to the bank, and I could be the CEO of my company.
So what I'm trying to say is the key takeaway here is that you have to understand where your fitment is. So whichever arm or service you are from, whether you are from parachute regiment or you are from ASC or signals or engineers, what you have to actually see is whether you want to be an industry where you can leverage your experience in the armed forces to be part of core function in the industry. For example, if there is a civil engineer in from engineers, okay, then he would like to be part of, say, Larsen and Toubro, where the civil engineering maybe uh, the core function, in the core function, part of core function. Similarly, there may be there are companies whose function is to provide, whose business is to provide security services. So either you can join Reliance as a security officer, or you can join G4S, in the securities services provisioning. So there you are in the business side. Here you are in the services side. You are providing the service, you are heading that service function. So what you have to actually decide is which side you should be.
Mhm.
So, and that's how you can leverage your experience in the armed forces, by being part of core function, or you can choose to be part of the support function. I don't know whether I make sense or not.
So I'll sum it up for the audience. What Kochhar has said is that your if you are in the core function of a company, that particular function should be critical for the survival of that organization. That particular function is the one which gets the revenue or the business for that organization. And that function cannot be outsourced, or even if it is outsourced, it can only be partially outsourced. On the other hand, the support function is which supports the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization, which may be outsourced, and the growth of a support function would be usually up to the department head. This is
Right.
what Manish has said. Moving on, how do you say what is operations? Is it a core function or is it a support function? And what is included in operations?
Mission is definitely a core function. I mean, you're in operations. The operations of business. What is operating? The business has to operate so that business gets money. You generate revenue. So if you are providing services, if you are fulfilling orders, if you are in the production side, if you are in the manufacturing sector, if you are on the shop floor, if you are in the project management, and the company is getting business because of that project, then you are in the it's a core function.
So
So
operations by design is the core function.
yeah,
So therefore, if an officer is joining the operations team in a business, then the chances of growth and getting paid better are higher.
yeah, it is very. I mean, joining operations is very this thing. It is, and it is a very demanding job, especially in companies which are very operations intensive, which have daily operations in telecom industry, and even all these uh, delivery, last mile deliveries, right? All these companies operations is very very demanding, this thing, and highly paid also.
What about sales oblique business development, sir? How would you view that?
Sales is the executive branch of any business.
Okay.
Sales is the executive branch of any business. So,
Mhm.
what is getting money? Anything which is getting money. What is the core objective of a business, of a company? Is to fetch money, meet their expenses, and be in net profit, right?
Mhm.
So, basically, to earn. So, until the time sales is not there, whether they are in the services business, whether they're in the product business, it doesn't matter. You are selling something, and that is what is getting money for the survival, for the payments, for the expenditures which the company is incurring, and then whatever is left is for everyone to enjoy. So,
Mhm.
sales is the executive function in for any business. It is the executive branch. So it's a core function. Business development, sales, revenue assurance, B2B, B2C, channel sales, institution sales, defense sales, all these. And if you are a good closure, if you are a good salesperson, sky is the limit.
Okay. And what would be your recommendation to officers on this on sales? Because very few officers seem to be opting for sales.
See, first of all, uh, sales require people to be, you have to be people's person. You have to come out of your comfort zone, be ready for refusals. Don't feel this thing. You should be ready to speak to the customer irrespective of his uh, class. If he's a customer, he's a customer. And if he's ready to give, if he is a person you're going to get business from. So there are a lot of things. What happens is we come with little bit of baggage, and that's why we don't try. But this is the executive branch of a corporate sector, and especially my recommendation to, especially to short service commission officers, would be to uh, join sales by acquiring requisite qualifications, maybe MBA from good this thing. Short service commission officers who have age on their side, and uh, good salesmen will never be out of job. Definitely not. And then once you are in sales, and then you learn the tricks of the trade, then maybe it may be a stepping stone towards an entrepreneurship also. You should have negotiating skills matter a lot. Your negotiating skills, your tenacity, your pressure uh, absorption capabilities, targets, ownership, hustle, energy, so many things which matter actually. And you learn also a lot. So I would say that uh, sales is something, if you start doing well, you start enjoying. It is like, and in fact, people, don't you think that we are actually in every field, actually we are selling. Somebody is selling his ideas. When you are presenting to somebody, you are actually selling your ideas to them. You talk to your 5-year-old kid, and when you are trying to convince him for something, you are actually selling your this thing. So sales is a very interesting field. People should, I think, try it. But
Short
it's a
service. What
right.
about जर्नल मैनेजमेंट सर, या मतलब जो सीनियर मैनेजमेंट जिसको बोलते हैं?
General management. I will ask you only this question. General management would be what?
So general management, as the name says, they are basically the directorial roles, people who take process level or business level or department level decisions, budgeting,
Right.
research allocation, policy making, board members. So a lot of senior officers can try for that in advisory capacity, because
Yeah,
they have that kind of a holistic view. They have that bird's eye view of things.
absolutely right. Who can make policy? Somebody who has been in that industry for long, and who's keeping himself abreast of the recent developments in that particular field. So if anybody who has got this kind of experience and all, he can be in the policy making, he can be in the senior management role, and people who are there coming after full service, and maybe the general cadre officer also, they can actually try for general management roles and core function. You find many of them. In fact, in the academic sector, at least you will find many of these people. In most of the university, this thing you will find some uh, general or brigadiers sitting over there, and taking part in the policy decision making process. In fact, there are certain courses also for policy making. This thing, Takshila Institute is, I think, one which provides good courses on policy making. Right.
My last question before, how do you categorize HR, business support, which is also known as administration, and security? What all is covered under these three? So this question has two parts. One, is it a core function or a support function? Second, what all is covered under the three? If you can tell me that separately. What is covered in security? What is covered under HR? What is covered under business support or administration broadly? And is it a support function or is it a core function?
But this is a very HR, whether it is a support function or a core function, I think it is a very loaded question. But I think I think it is a support function, but a very key support function at that. Uh, any successful organization, if it is a large organization, I'm not talking about organization which has got three, four, five employees, and which is not manpower intensive. Any manpower intensive organization or any large organization, HR is a very important, and a lot depends on HR. From employee satisfaction, employee hiring, hiring right kind of talent, then retaining them, then addressing their grievances to everything. And HR administration is part of HR, security is part of HR in most organizations. Unless the security, it is unless we are talking about some very security heavy, asset heavy companies where security may be an independent function. But otherwise, HR is a very loaded function, all encompassing. And that's why the head HR is always part of the key decision making bodies in almost all good organizations. So security is in most organizations is under HR and administration also. But here I what I want to emphasize is there are a lot of officers in our previous talks and in previous conversations, interactions. A lot of officers have undermined security as if a lot of inventory officers only. I heard the comments. You also, I think, must have heard that. Why should we always go for security only? I mean, as if security is something which is very run of the mill kind of. Security in corporate sector right now is a highly specialized function. So, and at that, and a very highly paid also at that, provided you pitch yourself well, don't sell yourself short, and go for the right kind of qualifications and go for the right organizations. So all this, that kind of mm, homework a person will have to do, but otherwise, and then people who call themselves GD, जिनसे मैं हमेशा बहस करता रहता हूँ कि please don't call yourself GD. They should look for those organizations जहाँ पे security is the core function, so that they are part of the core team.
जैसे आपने बोला G4S.
Yeah. So, I mean, G4S, it was just an example, but there are so many others. There may be oil companies where the security may be very important. That's why they are ready to pay so good. Aramco and all these companies where security is important. Assets, they are asset heavy companies. And security of those assets may be very important.
Other than that, security, HR, and admin, they are support functions.
Hand in glove support. Yeah.
Hand in glove support.
HR head generally controls all these. Even learning and development training is also part of HR.
Okay, and what all would be covered under business support or administration? One and the same thing.
Facility management, which is there now, that is all these now have become very You see, as the organizations are growing manpower, where the square feet coverage is too much, there is too much of facilities which are there, air conditioning, etc., and all space management is a the work in shifts. In all these places, facility management itself is a very specialized function. The real estate is shared, is on sharing basis. It's prime, and uh, it has to be optimized. The use has to be optimized, and has to be done in a manner so that the business's continuity is not affected. So, so while we are saying that these are support functions, in no way are they any less important.
Yeah, definitely not, sir. I'm not saying they're less important. The point was that uh, within a particular organization, how the organization is shaped. So yes, army cannot work without the signal corps, but the signal corps is needed because there is the fight going on.
Right. Right.
So
So it's like this that Sachin Tendulkar alone cannot do anything. You require
yeah.
everyone has a part to play, and
Hmm.
sooner you realize this, better it is for you.
Hmm.
So
So, so if I summarize it, so there are basically three core functions. One is the operations, business development oblique sales, and the general management. And then we have the support functions, which is human resources, training, part of human resources, security, and business support services, which is also known as administration.
and people, human resources is a humongous function actually. I
Yeah.
mean, right from hiring, talent management, compensation, employee benefits, compliances, regulatory, training and development, workplace safety, security. First, I mean, all these, while we are very fond of writing in our CVs, HR management, the kind of HR management which is there uh, is it's a you have to make so many policies, you have to be part of everything, you have to understand that this business, once this started, will require so much of manpower. Then they have to start hiring process, which itself goes, it's quite a task. Very,
Understood, sir.
very responsible,
For
big
this
responsibility.
sake of understanding and just for clarity, so there are three core functions: sales, oblique business development, operations, and general management, and the rest equally important but are support functions, which is HR, uh, security, and business support oblique administration.
Right.
You gotta focus on yourself, on your faith, on your dreams, on your mind, on your health, yeah. You gotta work, never tell, keep your head down.